is. Take it away, Kent.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Ted, for putting this together and inviting me to come. I've been in the Canary Islands since Wednesday, and I've loved it. I was on Tenerife. I recognize some of you. It's good to see you again. And then arrived here on Sunday afternoon, and I've loved Gran Canaria. No, I'm not going to tell you which one I like better. I like them both. Yes, today I am going to talk about progressive enhancement. How many of you know what I mean when I say progressive enhancement? Great! This is perfect. You're in the right place. Before we get started, though, I'd like to invite everybody to please stand up. We've been sitting for like over an hour, so this is, got to get our bodies moving. I noticed, like, some of you did get up, but some of you didn't, so this is for all of you. Put your arms out in front of you like this. Yeah, those in Tenerife, you're like, yeah. Okay, we're going to count out loud together. Okay, but before we do, 11 is 11, and 12 is 12?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. I keep forgetting. Okay, you got to count out loud with me, though. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. You're doing so great. 6, 7. Doesn't it feel good? 9. Yes, let's start over. 1. No, just kidding. 12. All right, stretch up over your head as high as you can, and then even higher than that. And then stretch over one side, and over to the other. All right, thank you. You can sit down now. Yeah. This is all for your brain. Your brain needs blood to flow for it to process things, and it's been a long day for some of us, so getting blood flowing will hopefully help us process all of this better. Also, you can't say that you didn't get anything out of my talk, so you got exercise. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what progressive enhancement is, and I guess I probably better not walk across. Well, I guess I can. So a little bit about progressive enhancement. Some demos and things, and there will be a mic drop moment, so watch the mic. We're not here to hate on JavaScript. A lot of people who are into progressive enhancement are just always talking about how awful JavaScript is. We're actually here to, progressive enhancement is actually about JavaScript and what the cool things that JavaScript can do for you. So we'll talk about what role JavaScript is supposed to play in building web applications. So, how many of you have been doing web application development for over a decade, over 10 years? Okay, I actually can't raise my hand, not yet. I've still got a couple of years before I get to a decade. So a couple of you. So especially for you, but for anybody who kind of knows the history of web dev, I want you to think about why was web dev so much easier before, and what is it that changed that made building web applications so hard? And I'm not talking about user requirements. And I'm also, like, some of you might be thinking, well, it wasn't easier because I had to deal with IE6. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the, well, you'll see what I'm talking about here in a bit. There is something that changed in the way that we build web applications that made it a lot harder. And we're going to make it a lot easier soon. But just keep that in mind. So, this is progressive enhancement. This is an example of what progressive enhancement is. Say that you're at Tenerife or Telepizza, right? Your delivery place, and if I want to pull up an app, the app on my phone and order some oh, never mind, it's Domino's. We're getting Domino's. So I'm Domino's, and I want to order some pizza. The Domino's wants to place my order at the place that's closest to where I am, and so by default, it can have like a little input that says where your address is, and then it will tell you here's the closest one. Or it could use the geolocation API if your phone supports it, and then it will just, you say, tell me the closest one to where I am, and it'll say here's that, and hopefully not sell your data, your location or anything. But the idea is that the baseline is functional. The app works. So even if I don't let them know my location, or maybe my device doesn't support this API, the app is going to work just fine. But I can enhance the experience by making it so the user doesn't have to type in their address, which I think is a nice enhancement. This is why we like JavaScript, because we can make the experience better for our users. So that's a basic idea of progressive enhancement. But actually, I was surprised to find out that Progressive Enhancement was introduced to the world in 2003 by Steve Chapman and colleagues. And the idea expands much further than just JavaScript. So there are a couple of points on the Wikipedia article about Progressive Enhancement. So basic content should be accessible to all web browsers, and functionality also accessible to web browsers. Sparse semantic markup contains all the content, so this is where we get to the baseline functional, right? And especially in 2003, it was mostly about the content, not about the experience of the app. Although web apps, we've been able to build web apps since the very beginning. We had links with the anchor tag, and we had forms for doing data mutations. So forever, as long as HTML has been a thing, we've been able to build web apps. But this is mostly about or this was largely focused on the content. But it also talked about layout with CSS. Fun fact, CSS actually is younger than JavaScript. JavaScript has been around for longer than CSS. And actually JavaScript is only 3 months older than HTML. So it came very, very early as far as the standards are concerned. So enhanced layout is provided by externally linked CSS, and then behavior comes from JavaScript, and then browser preferences are respected. So those are the overarching concepts of what Progressive Enhancement is all about. I really like JavaScript a lot, so we're going to focus in on this one, but I wanted to contextualize this a little bit for everybody, because I think that's useful. So what I'm going to try and convince you of this evening is, or is this the afternoon? I don't know. In Spain, it seems like afternoon is like until I go to bed. I don't know what evening is, but yeah, so I want to talk about how using JavaScript to enable a user experience is not as good as using JavaScript to enhance the experience. And both from the perspective of the user, but actually also from the perspective of the developer. So a lot of time when we talk about progressive enhancement, a lot of us are thinking about, oh, how can we make this better for the user? I'm going to put all this effort and investment into making my site progressively enhanced, with the baseline of functionality and enhancing it. I'm going to do all of that work just for the user. Turns out it's actually just as useful for you as a developer, even more so in some cases. I'm going to try and demonstrate that. But we're going to demonstrate this, at least from the user's perspective, using an example. How many of you know of YouTube.com? Is this YouTube? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, there we go. Yeah. So YouTube, huge website, one of the most popular social media sites in the world, and has gobs of money and really intelligent engineers. And they made they made my day not so good once. Or I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to give a demonstration here of an actual experience that I had as a user, and when I experienced this, I was really surprised. But this is the status quo for lots of us, and here's what happened for me. So I'm going to slow down the network to slow 3G so we can observe this happening, and then I'm going to go to youtube.com. The first thing that happens there is you actually get redirected to www.youtube.com. But once you get there, they're going to send an HTML document. And before it even displays anything, it has a bunch of script tags that it starts loading. When it finally does display stuff, there's nothing useful there at all. Like no things for me to interact with. It's just skeletons. This is really common. The reason that it's taking so long is because there's this desktop Polymer file that is 1.3 megabytes in size. It's just a ridiculous amount of JavaScript. And when that finally finishes downloading, now we finally get to have our UI. Hooray, it's great. But you'll notice I'm trying to do a search. I type in my search and hit enter, and it disappears. So they downloaded just enough JavaScript to render an input and also to make it not work. So now we're waiting for 500 kilobytes of this base.js file, which will download enough to actually make the search input work. Sorry, one sec. There we go. Now we can search, and it works. So here's the thing that gets me really upset about this. The browser knows how to do what I just did, and doesn't need any JavaScript to do it. You can render, like I said, from the very beginning of HTML, for those 3 months before JavaScript was standardized, we were able to build web applications. We did not need JavaScript for that, certainly not. You literally just if they had just put the input and the form inside of their HTML document that they sent instead of that skeleton UI that we saw before, then I would have been able to do my search right away. And the browser would have been able to handle that. It'll serialize the value into the search params there in the URL. It would have worked just exactly the same. This is not cool. And this is how so many of the websites that we use today are built. Is completely useless, enabled by JavaScript. So that's one example, but sometimes people will say, well, okay, yeah, that may work for a simple content site, but I'm building Figma or some other really advanced thing. There's no way I can build this without JavaScript. And I mean, there is a way you could build it without JavaScript. This woman, Jens, Jens with an extra Z at the end, she threw this together as a little experiment just to see how far could you take progressive enhancement. This has no JavaScript on the page. And it still works. It's brilliant. It's very cool. And of course, it's mostly like a joke, just an experiment. It's not really, I would not ask or expect Figma to actually build their site like this. That would be ridiculous. But it gets you thinking about like, how far can I really take this user experience where we can make our app work before the JavaScript has finished loading? That would be kind of useful. And on top of that, this isn't just about the user experience either. We'll explore a little bit about what impact this has on the developer experience here as well. So she built this in Remix. How many people, anybody here use Remix at all? Okay, sweet, sweet. How many people have heard of it? Oh, nice. Sweet. All right, welcome to the promised land, everybody else. So Remix is fantastic. Just quick intro, it's basically like Next, except so much better in so many ways. I talk your ear off about how great it is. Yeah?
There's that huge.
Yes. Ted?
Yes,
can we get some sort of cup? I don't know if we can. There's just glare on the screen right now.
Yeah, I might not be able to do anything.
Yeah, it's coming from that window. Yeah. Yeah, the back window. That's where it's coming from.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it may go away in just a couple minutes. So.
Yeah, I think you're just gonna have to live with it because I don't think we have any.
That's okay. Hopefully that's okay. Yeah. So Remix, full disclosure, I guess. Actually, here's another question. How many of you have used React Router before? Okay, yeah, that's about right. About 70% of React apps use React Router. It's enormous, even still. I know that Next has all the attention and it's exciting and everything, but React Router is still like way, way bigger. Remix was built by the guys who built React Router, Michael Jackson and Ryan Florence. I worked with them for a while, so there's your full disclosure. I have no stock in the company or anything. The company was actually bought by Shopify. So I have no Shopify stock. There's no ulterior motive. I just love this thing a lot. I'm going to show you one of the reasons why. How many of you remember To Do MVC? Anybody? To Do MVC. So this project was years ago. This showed up like a little bit after I joined the software development world. So maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. To do it, around that time we had a lot of UI frameworks. It was like this big joke in the UI world, like, oh, there's another week, another library of JavaScript for rendering UIs. They don't know anything they're talking about. So we had Backbone, Knockout, Angular, JS 1.0, Ember. Vue wasn't really a thing until later. And then React came on, and that was about the time this. Actually, React is 10 years old as of yesterday, I think. Like, yeah, pretty exciting. So I guess this must have been a while ago. So To Do MVC was basically like, let's design a spec for an app and then implement it in all of these and then just see, so people can compare which one they prefer to use to make it easier to choose between these different UI libraries. This actually totally took progressive enhancement and kicked it down the field because they're just like, you know what, my app there's no way my app could ever possibly work without JavaScript, and so I'm just going to embrace that and say it doesn't. If you don't have JavaScript, we'll just show this little thing that says, please enable JavaScript, and that's the experience for those users. what I did was I thought, it's been a while, I wonder what to do MVC would look like in a more modern framework that cares about progressive enhancement. So I built it. So this is actually deployed, you can go through it if you want to, but I added a bunch of cool things. So it was built with Remix, that's a cool thing. It has backend persistence, so the regular to-do MVC was just in local storage. So this will actually persist, and it has user auth, so you could sign into one device and then into another and have that'll sync. And it's progressively enhanced. We'll look at some examples of what that means. And then it uses 15% less client-side JavaScript versus the compared TypeScript and React example that they had implemented. And what's lots of the reason for that, which we won't get to tonight, is, well, a little bit, how Remix just moves a lot of your code over to the server. And so lots of the business logic for your code just lives on the server, just bare minimum stuff for the client. So, let's talk about the user experience aspect of moving this over to Remix and progressively enhanced app. So I built this, deployed this to a single node server in Virginia, and then the official example for the TypeScript React one is on a CDN, so it's globally available. And I ran a test from India, so the opposite side of the world to Virginia, and here's what the results were as far as the initial page load. So a couple things I want you to notice. This takes twice as long to load, even though it's on a CDN. The one on the left is authenticated, and it's actually pulling user data, all of that. So that whole lie that I also said sometimes, that oh, let's deploy this on a CDN, it'll be much faster. That is super false. It is not necessarily true that it will be faster just because it's on a CDN. I could go way into detail on why we get these results, but server rendering is really fast, and it makes for a much better user experience. So that's the UX side of progressive enhancement. That's part of it. So let's take a look at some more of the UX here. So I've disabled JavaScript, so there's no JavaScript. You can notice every time I do an interaction, we get a full page refresh, the favicon is refreshing and everything. And I don't want you to think so much from a UX perspective, like how many users are disabling JavaScript. Like 0.0001. Like there are users who do, but not many. But think about a couple of other scenarios where we won't have JavaScript. Like I go into a tunnel, I'm on a train, I go into a tunnel at the time when I'm downloading the site and the JavaScript fails to load. That actually, you don't have to go into a tunnel for that to happen. JavaScript fails to load all the time. Or I am on a really slow network connection. Maybe I'm an executive and you're thinking to yourself, well, this isn't gonna matter to me because I sell the product I'm building is for executives at big companies, and it's all behind a login screen. So initial page load doesn't matter because they're always on a fast internet connection. Well, they're probably paying you gobs of money for that, and they're probably not super jazzed about the fact that they go off to another country that they have really slow internet connection, and your app is taking forever to load, and they're spending tons of money on it. So even those types of experience, it actually matters a lot that your app is still fast. So what's cool about this is even if your app isn't very slow, because you progressively enhanced it, the user can actually start interacting with it before the JavaScript shows up. So that's cool. It's a much better user experience there. So in this case, the JavaScript does not enable the experience. Now again, if this were Figma, then what this would be is like, here's your canvas, and then you've got all the other things on the page that maybe the user's not here to change the design of the canvas. Maybe they're just here to look at what the comments were. You can server render that. There's nothing wrong with that. So there are a lot of things that we can do even in that world. But again, not just the UX, but I'm not done talking about UX. Let's talk about how this works. So the way this works is the browser has built-in mutations. You've got your to-do ID. I'll show you how that shows up in here. The state that you want to change it to and what you're trying to do. So this was actually all part of the form that the browser is serializing. So we're looking at the network tab, by the way, the post request that's made when I toggle one of the to-dos. So here's what that form looks like. There's your HTML. You've got your form, method, post. You've got a couple inputs. Let's look at each one of these. So with that method post, that tells the browser, hey, instead of sticking this in the URL, in the search params, put this in the request body. This is really useful for login forms where you don't want their password to go in the URL. Just a thought. So lots of the things, mutations that we're making, and almost all mutations that you make, like changes in the data, should be done using a post. So we have our method post that says, okay, stick this in the payload of the form data, and then we have an input. This is a hidden input. This is a thing that we used to do, and PHP devs probably still do it. Well, we're bringing it back with Remix, where we just say, hey, all that this form is literally just the checkbox, right? And so I don't want the user to have to type in the to-do ID that they want to complete. So for that stuff, we use hidden inputs to declaratively say, here is some more data that I want to make along with this request. You don't have to say event prevent default and then call some JSON API with some data you have in memory or whatever. You just stick it in the form. And so then we also have the completed state, so we want that to be. We also hide that just because the nature of the way that our UI is designed. And then another fun thing is buttons can also have a name and a value. So you can have multiple submit buttons, and whichever one the user clicks actually gets serialized in the form. I did not know that before Remix. That's pretty cool. So that's how that works. Now I want to come back to this question. Why was web dev so much easier before? This is rhetorical. It's because it's kind of a, I'm hunting for an answer, a specific answer, so I'm not going to ask people to answer. But to answer this, I want to show you the example of the app again. And I want you to, you can throw out answers. I want you to tell me if you can detect what client-side state management library I'm using, okay? So is it Redux, Apollo, like which one is it? So any guesses? What state management library am I using? It's kind of hard to guess because that'd be like an in-memory thing, right? It's actually a trick question.
Come on, Diego.
I can't. It's impossible for me to use a client-side state management library for this because I don't have client-side JavaScript at all, right? So I am proving this. The whole reason I did all this was just to prove to you that you don't need to have client-side state management. That's like 30 to 50% of the code you work on, and the bugs you have are going to be in that code. And yeah, you don't need it. This is why Progressive Enhancement rocks for developer experience. Because if you are targeting Progressive Enhancement, then you are not allowed to use client-side state management. Your Redux store is the database. That's where it should be. It's awesome. How many of you are using React Query? Okay, also awesome. If you are not doing a Progressive Enhancement thing, then use React Query. It's fabulous. But it's even better this way. This is even better. The mental model is the answer to the question. Why was it so easier to build before? Because the mental model was simple. Back then, you never thought about changes in state over time. That was never a consideration for you because you're literally like, the user submits the form, you make the change to the database, you send back a response that says, okay, now go over here. It's a post redirect get process. And so then they say, okay, let me go over here. And now they go to you and you're like, oh, great, let me just go to the database, I get the latest data and send it back. So you never really thought about that. Of course, there were sessions and cookies and stuff. There's a little bit of that. Nothing like what we're doing these days. So the mental model of building multi-page apps is way, way better than the single-page app mental model. The single-page, you're thinking about time like the entire time. You're like, I hope they don't leave the app open for multiple days because I have no idea what's going to happen. So the MPA model is much better. But here's the problem, and here's why we went to single-page apps. Spots can just do so much better things. Like you can't build Figma with an MPA. This just cannot be done. And most of the things that we're building, we can't build with MPAs. Here's another pretty simple example. If I had to do a full page refresh every time I liked a tweet, how many tweets do you think I would like? Probably none, because that would just be a garbage experience. And so, yeah, I liked the mental model, but I don't like the lack of capabilities. I want to have both. I want to mix them. I want to remix them. That's where the name comes from. I want the mental model of an MPA with the capabilities of an SPA. That gives me an excellent developer experience and an awesome user experience. And that's all because of Progressive Enhancement. And Remix stated goal is to help with progressive enhancement. So there's no application state management with Remix, even if you're building Figma. That's the mic drop. Okay, so let's talk about what we can do now that we do care about JavaScript. We want to bring JavaScript along. This whole time we've been talking about how great it is if you don't have JavaScript. But no, we want the JavaScript because it makes the user experience better. So what can we do now that we've focused on progressive enhancement? The app is working. Let's make it better with JavaScript. So pending UI is a good example. Right now, every time I'm on a slow 3G network to simulate some of this, every time I do any interaction, navigation, a form submission, which is a navigation actually, an anchor tag and a form tag are almost the same, except that the form allows you to also send data when you're navigating. So that's an interesting thought. So every single time we do that, we're getting a refresh of the browser, which is cool because we're getting feedback. We see, okay, there's the favicon, it's spinning. Browser is acknowledging my request. Awesome. But then once I add JavaScript, I lose that because I say event prevent default. Because we're making a fetch request now. We're not doing a form submission. We're fetching with JSON or whatever. And there's no API to say, hey, favicon spin. And I actually don't really like that anyway. Like if the favicon spinning was the only thing you got when you did a tweet favorite or something, like that would, it's too separate from the thing that you did. I want it to be localized. Also, there can only be one spinning favicon, but sometimes I can do multiple things in rapid succession. I want to see the progress of each one of those. Right? So we're pretty limited here. But as soon as you add the JavaScript, now you have to think about, okay, how do I manage the fact that I just got rid of the feedback or the pending UI? So here's how we do that in Remix. This is the component that we're using to render each one of those list items. And each one of those has three things that you can do, three mutations. You can either update it, toggle it, or delete it. And in Remix, we have this hook called usefetcher, which I think is a great name. Allows you to make fetch requests. And we're going to be focusing on the toggle fetcher. So the toggle fetcher allows you to render a form. And so this will render just a legit form. I should mention, like, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but Remix is a browser emulator. So when I said, let's turn on JavaScript, it's literally all it's doing is saying, great, I'm going to emulate everything that the browser does. I'll do exactly the same sort of thing, just with JavaScript. And there are obviously some limitations with that, because now we don't have the favicon spinner, which is what we're trying to solve now. So by rendering a form here, the form is going to operate as if the browser, or just the way the browser would, until the JavaScript shows up. When the JavaScript shows up, Remix will do event prevent default, but then simulate the same sort of thing that would have happened otherwise. Okay, so we have our method post, we have our input values and stuff. So for me to be able to add pending UI, I need to know when the toggle fetcher is submitting. I need to know when there's some sort of submission going on here for that toggle fetcher. So this is how I do it. I say, if the toggle fetcher has a submission, then we know we're in a toggling state. That's it. And my designer said if I just disable the buttons and stuff, they have some CSS that'll make it look like some pending state. So great. We'll just have disable to all the things. And now, this is what it looks like. We get some nice localized UI to indicate, hey, something's going on right now. That's much better than the spinner. We have enhanced it. We made it better. It will still work the old way. If the user disables JavaScript or it takes a while to load or something like that, it still works. But we made it better with progressive enhancement with a single line of code and then just like putting disable on a couple fields. Yeah, that's pretty neat. And if it fails, it will still work. It'll fall back just fine. Oh yeah, did you notice the lack of this? No use effect. That's great. No use state, no use reducer, no dispatch to tell the cows come home. Like none of that. Because that's not what you do when you're building a multi-page app. You just you say, okay, do the mutation, and then all of a sudden the data on the page is correct. Because that's just the way that multi-page apps work. And Remix is emulating that behavior for you. So you don't have to do this. So that's pretty sweet. I like that a lot. You get the SPA capabilities with the MPA mental model. Let's do something more complicated, and then I'm almost done. So optimistic UI, how many of you are familiar with this concept? Okay, awesome. So optimistic UI is basically like when you're on, when you do a mutation, if you know what the result of that mutation is going to be, or like you can kind of guess, then you just show the UI that what the UI is going to look like when that mutation is inevitably successful. So here's an example. Twitter, I make a tweet, and then I open up that tweet, and I'm going to slow down my network so that we can kind of observe some of this stuff. And then I like it, and it instantly changes to a like. But we have a slow network, so that didn't actually finish. And so you'll notice every time I toggle between the two, it instantly favorites. But if I delete it, what happens? If I try to unlike it, it instantly changes, but then it comes back because the tweet's deleted. I can never unfavorite that tweet for the rest of my life. It's stuck as a favorited tweet because it was deleted. Or it was the column called is deleted was set to true, because who deletes any data? But that's optimistic UI. You see this not in enough places, but you see it quite often. It just makes the experience feel much faster, even if you're on a slow network. And it only really works in situations where you know what the data or what the UI is going to look like when it's finished, and you can reasonably assume that it's going to work out. And then if it doesn't, then you need to roll back. And the rollback, that's the hard part. And that's why you don't see it very often, because it's really hard to roll back, unless you're using Remix. So here's our list item again. And we've got our, one thing you need to know about this form is we specify what the new value should be. So if the user is saying, here's the value I want it to be, then we know what the UI is going to look like. It's going to look like whatever it would look like with that current state. So instead of just saying the complete state is what comes from the data, how about we say, if there's a submission going on, so if we're in is toggling state, then let's grab what the submission says it's going to be, right? And we're done. That's optimistic UI with Remix. It can't get more complicated for more complicated things, but most of the time, that's how easy it is. So let's look at what that experience looks like now. I'm still on a simulated slow 3G connection, but I got rid of all of that pending UI stuff. I don't need pending UI if I've got optimistic UI. The user just assumes that it worked. So I'm sure your question is well, okay, yeah, but what happens if it fails? So we're going to add this random failure in our backend code, which we don't have time to show you all this, but this code is in the same file. It's really nice to have server code and the UI code in the same place. You're like, I'm going to make this change, and I'm going to go up there. Now I fixed it. It's awesome. So now with this random failure, we get automatic rollback because, let's think about this from a multi-page app perspective. If you click on one of those things, you get a full page refresh, and that database mutation was wrong, it's going to send back a response that says, this is the post redirect get thing again. It says, okay, come back and get this. So then it's going to go get the HTML. It's going to say, okay, generate me the new page based on the current state of the data. What is the current state of the data? It wasn't changed. There was an error. So I'm going to get the same stuff back. So as a multi-page app developer, you don't have to think about rollback either. Of course, you can't do optimistic UI. So, but that's the mental model for an MPA, and that's why this works. So I click on it, and it comes back with the correct state. So I'm never thinking about rollback when I'm building this optimistic UI, because I've got the mental model of a multi-page app. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Remix. And then I added optimism to everything in the app, and you can go look at the code later. I made it so if you include the word error in a to-do, then that will trigger an error, so you can kind of test out what that experience is like. But yeah, checking them off, it looks like it's all instant, but we're still on a slow 3G connection. When the error comes back right here, I can say 4 and then 5, and then that failed, it came back, and I can actually change it. And it gives me an error message and all that. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And it all still works before the JavaScript shows up. And I get that nice mental model and the excellent user experience. It's stellar. So just to wrap things up, Progressive Enhancement is 100% about accessibility. You want to make your app as accessible as possible to as many users, regardless of how capable their devices are, how nice their internet speed is, all that. Remix enables Progressive Enhancement. That's a big focus of Remix. It's fabulous. And simplifies DX and improves UX by giving you a remix of those two mental models. So Remix is not a multi-page app or a single-page app. It's what I'm calling a PESPA, a progressively enhanced single-page app. And I've got this big long blog post explaining like the history of how we transitioned through different eons of time from multi-page app to progressively enhanced multi-page app to single-page app, and why we made all these changes, and why the next change is PESPA, progressively enhanced single-page app. And what's really cool and really validating is I wrote this a while ago, and I said in the future we're all going to be doing this. And guess what? Next and SvelteKit and Solid Start and Quick City, they're all adopting. And even non-JavaScript stuff, so like PHP LiveView and Ruby's, I always forget, it's not TurboLinks anymore, Hotwire.
Hotwire.
Yeah, and Phoenix has another thing. That's like LiveWire, or they're all like, have the same names, but they're even non-JavaScript things are trying to do this. There's a lot to be said for just using JavaScript on both sides, but we can talk about that later. But everything is going this direction. I was right. Because it's so good. So working without JavaScript, just about as much about DX as it is about UX. Go and delete all your state management code and bugs. It's great. That's all that I have for you. You're all brilliant. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions. Feel free to take stickers. I did bring some of those stickers. I had to snag them from the conference because everybody was taking the stickers, so I didn't bring as many as I was planning on. But yeah, so grab them before they're gone. And yeah, I'll be around until they kick me out.
Thank you very much, Ken. I just want to say, those of you who work with me at Secret Source, what have I been saying since about 2015, Ruiman? I've been going on and on and on. Progressive enhancement, I've got to do progressive enhancement. I was doing it in PHP before we had all these beautiful tools.
That's good.
Yeah, well, except that it, it had so much time. I'm like, well, maybe depends on how you go about it, which is the thing that we didn't get to see in your presentation, is like, what's an actual implementation look like? And that's something I hope to be sort of teaching people at a future meetup of GofiGeeks. Do we have any questions for Kent? Here's one right here.
Hi, I don't really do front end, mostly on the back end side. So I was thinking, you disabled JavaScript, you made the request, so we need two APIs there?
Oh yeah, good question. Depends on the tools that you're using. Remix, you don't need two APIs. Other tools, they're all going to make it so you don't. But the way that Remix works is it says, if you're doing a regular form post, it's running on your server, and so it sees that request and says, oh, I know where that is supposed to go. It'll route your code. It's your router, so it takes care of routing that request to the right code. And if it's a fetch request, it makes a special kind of request that the router also understands, and it'll send it to the same code. So as far as you're concerned, you actually don't really know whether it's a data request, like a fetch request, or a full page reload request. It doesn't make a difference to your code. It'll be the same.
Oh, this sounds cool.
It is cool. Yeah, you got it.
Next. Okay.
Sorry. Hey, thanks for the talk. It's really interesting. I was wondering, you said that you had all the backend code right on the same file, but I personally don't like that. So could it be possible to just remove the backend and just attack an external API?
Yeah. So you could do that. I would recommend giving it a couple minutes, trying it the way that it is, because you'll like it, I promise. But if you really don't for some reason, there are a couple options. One, you could just use React Router. The latest version has lots of these APIs. The problem is it's not progressive enhancement because it's not server rendering. But yeah, you get a lot of the benefits. Like automatic revalidation of the data actually is in React Router as well. Another option is, even within Remix, you can have your actions and loaders, the actions responsible for those post requests, they can just forward on to another service. So that's actually fairly common because a lot of people have their backends already in some language. And so yeah, the Remix server ends up being kind of a backend for your front end, which is pretty common. We did that at PayPal. But with that architecture, you still get the benefits of progressive enhancement. So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah, sure.
So, hello. Basically, I would love to ask you, in terms of network speed, so basically it's like you disable JavaScript and all is going from the browser to the server or wherever and returning back. And with JavaScript, one of the main benefits when Ajax went was like reducing that time because you don't have like to wait till the DOM renders everything. It's just a matter of like moving out JSON files at the end. So what I don't see is like it will affect. More the question is like this is doing first of all server-side rendering and putting on top the JavaScript, so it chooses which one is going to do the network connection. And in case of disabled, if you disable JavaScript at the end, the time will be higher than when you have JavaScript enabled, right?
So yeah, if you disable the JavaScript, and like your users probably won't do that, but you can actually yourself just not render the scripts element that Remix gives you, and so no JavaScript will show up on the page. There are use cases for that. I wouldn't bother. But if that were the case, then yeah, every single navigation and everything would be like a typical multi-page app that is going to make a request for the entire document every time. It's not going to be as fast. And on top of that, I didn't show this, but Remix also makes it really easy to prefetch pages as you navigate around as well. So it would be very difficult to build an app that is faster than Remix for the web. You could probably build one that's as fast, but really difficult to build one that's faster. Based on lots of different metrics and stuff. But anyway, I think I'm kind of walking around your question a little bit, but as far as when you enable the JavaScript, once that JavaScript has showed up, it's no longer doing full document requests anymore. It's just doing fetch requests for the minimal amount of data.
I was thinking of the example of the tunnel, because you're starting on.
Oh yeah, sure.
You go to a tunnel, and what's going to happen?
Yeah. So in the tunnel, let's say you get the HTML, and now it's loading the JavaScript in the background. You get in the tunnel, internet goes out, and now all you have is the HTML on the page. In any scenario, unless you're building an offline app, which is a whole subset of constraints and interesting ideas, unless you're doing that, and actually Remix will address that problem really well in the future. But if you do any sort of navigation or mutation on any app, it's going to poop out on you. And so in the case of Remix, let's say that I go into the tunnel, I'm looking at the app, I get out of the tunnel, and then I do something, it will actually work. And that's not just Remix, that's just the idea of progressive enhancement. So that's at least better. The status quo for most of us is we get out of the tunnel and then we do something and it blows up on us. So, yeah.
I'm looking around, I don't see anyone.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Really great to have you here, Kent. Thank you so much. Have a look and see what's in there. And
okay.
Brett, I've got one for you too. Brett is Kent's brother. He's been here with him the whole time, and I had the great fortune of spending the day with both of them, and it was just really lovely. We went through.
This is really cool.
I took them through Vegeta and Triana and explained the architecture and the history and all that stuff. And then they also, of course, got the obligatory, box of tea. Thank you both very much. If you don't mind, we'd like to get a quick picture with you, Ken and Andreina, and Can you take care of that?
Thank you.
And we've got pizza back there, so let me just explain that real quick while we're doing the picture. For some of you who want to go back and start in on the pizzas, you're free to distribute them around the tables. Enjoy. There's soft drinks back there as well. And that's it. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Stay in touch.
Actually, really quick, one thing.
Sorry. Wait.
I just remembered one thing I wanted to mention. And if anybody wants to play around with this, then I have built. Oh man, you gotta be kidding! Oh, I busted it.
That was intentional.
Okay, I'll figure that out later. But because I don't have internet, so I was trying to run it locally. I messed something up. I'm working on this thing called the Epic Stack that is a project starter and a project reference. So if you want to start with something that has all of the decisions made for you already, so you're not paralyzed by having all these decisions to make, then check out the Epic Stack. Basically, if you want to build web apps the way I do, then take a look at the Epic Stack. Just Google Epic Stack. I'm pretty sure that by now it's the first result. So, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's really cool. Yeah, it's absolutely. We were talking about that last night. I think and it was like,
it's pretty good.
I love progressive enhancement, don't I, Fed? I've been talking about it like forever, right? Yes.
2007 or something like that.
2007. Thank you. Remarkable. Thank you so much, Ken. All right, off we go. Pizza, photo. All right, photo primero. Vale, okay, con quién? Charlotte. With everyone. You want everyone? Okay, venga, todo el mundo. Para acá, saca foto.
Vamos a hacer 3 fotos, okay? 3 photos. One with our best smiles, okay? First, the talks. Okay. One photo. The first photo will be with our best smiles. The second photo will be like our war shout, like GofiGeeks! And then the third one will be a great wave, okay? Well, please go up.
All right.
At the end, okay? 1, 2, 3.